Holy smokes. Back then we didn't have plywood, I guess. Literally the amenities. I welcome Councillor Yankoff as a new member. Lana was part of planning.
For about a month.
But about a month, and she was traded
Yeah.
to another position, claim me or trade me. Councillor Julie McCabe, she's a veteran elected person anyway here.
No pressure.
Shallon, next to her, Bob Kenny in the corner. Chris, last name? Fournier, right. On my far left, Basil Camley, Greg McGinnis, and Rosemary Herbert. How's that? Not bad. Oh, and Alex Forbes, the boss. So, do we have any declaration of conflict of interest tonight?
I do a conflict with number 8.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to put on the record from back in June, there may have been a potential conflict with me with these buyers. At that time, I didn't know they were proposing to buy this land, and I do have a bit of a relationship with those guys, and just show them what you know. Okay?
So you're in conflict tonight when we get
Yeah,
to actually, it's going to be the first one, because with the indulgence or permission of committee or board, I would like to move some of the agenda around a bit. I think we have a large contingent from Traynor Street here in various parts of the building, and the Parkdale room next to us here, out in the main foyer on the second floor, and also down in the tourism area. So there's quite a few here from that area. I know some of them have small children and would appreciate getting home as soon as possible. So I think we'll move the Traynor Street people up to number 1 if we could. At the same time, if we could we meet, if you people agree, or move the May Point, Tim Hortons access road deal. So we move that up to number 2. And then after that is finished, we can revert back to our schedule as presented with 190 Euston Street right through to, I guess, 505 Malpeque Road. So that's just a bit of a change to accommodate the folks. So moving on, approval of the agenda, which you have in front of you with the said changes. The approval agenda for Monday, November 2nd. Do I have a mover of that? Moved by Reg McGinnis, seconded by Councillor Yankoff. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried unanimously. The adoption of the minutes of the Planning Board of Friday, October 23rd, 2020. Do I have a mover of the adoption of the minutes? Moved by Bob Kenny, seconded by Alana Yankoff, that the minutes of Friday, October 23rd be adopted as presented. No discussion. All those in favor? All those opposed? Passed unanimously. Business arising from the minutes. Is there any business arising from those minutes? Having heard none, let us move on to our first case, and that would be, as we have said, it will be what is referred to.
Excuse me, Chair.
Pardon?
If I had new business, won't wait till the end.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, the introduction of new business at number 7.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just note that.
Okay, thank you.
So that it doesn't, with the first one for tonight was presented as number 8, reconsideration for 18 Traynor Street, PIDs 889873 and 388199. Request to reconsider the request to consolidate 2 properties in the Highway Commercial C2 zone. Robert, you want to take over?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
So the application before you tonight is reconsideration of Council's original decision on June 8th of this year for the lot consolidation of 2 properties located off of Traynor Streets. The resolution that was passed by Council is to approve the lot consolidation. That would result in the construction of 3 apartments that would total 60 units. But the resolution was in regards to lot consolidation. So that's a separate property there. Currently, as you can see, it's zone C2, highway commercial. Highway commercial steps down to R4 uses permitted, so apartments would be permitted uses. within the C2 zone. So that is what the intention of the lot consolidation was for. Consolidate, can't see on the screen here, but consolidate essentially the property with a portion of the main property along Trainer Street with access off onto Trainer Street itself. That's the proposal there, the 3 apartments. And then that's just some rendering that was provided by the applicant. So in regards to the reconsideration, there is criteria, a threshold test that has to be met in order for council's previous decision to be reconsidered. I'm going to focus on basically the 3 tests because essentially that's what the discussion of tonight's report revolves around, is that did council err procedurally? Was there any interpretation? Was there anything that might have satisfied one of those criteria that would then trigger the ability for council to reconsider the original decision? So based on the reconsideration threshold test, the first one was new material, facts and evidence. So not available at the time the decision was made. So the appellant, on behalf of the local neighborhood, submitted a reconsideration form. That's part of your package as an attachment. But looking through the actual concerns that were raised, the overarching concern or issues were focused mainly on traffic-related. And so essentially, any new materials, facts, evidence not available at the time. There was submissions that the appellant had with the traffic study that was referenced in the original report, as well as the proposed access point onto Trainer Street itself, claiming that there was no access or access was prohibited. These things, these items, any written documentation, staff cannot corroborate that claim. So that was something that would have to be set aside. And again, moving on through the rest of the appellant's issues. So essentially, the main one I want to talk about is the 3rd criteria, where there is clear reasonable doubt to the correctness decision in the first instance. There was not much change in material circumstances, so usually, and I think the board remembers, at one point in time there was, we're going through bylaw amendments. So say if a bylaw was changed at the time of an application, and the changes to the bylaw amendments could have resulted in maybe a different analysis, so that would change the decision of council or change disposition of the application itself, then that would warrant a reconsideration purpose under the new regulations. In this instance, there's been nothing of note that would effectively change the policies that was quoted in the original report. For the 3rd, so that's where the applicant was claiming that there was doubt as to the correctness in the first instance. So going back to the main points, again, the overarching concern was traffic related. A lot of them were subjective opinions and concerns about perceived traffic congestion and safety. These are usually common objections to any proposed development that results into infill or increased density. But the city at the time, and like everything else, we utilize other experts in the fields. In this case, it was a traffic engineer's expert who based their recommendation on empirical and objective evidence to look back on the potential impact that this development could have on the local streets and the neighborhood. They stated in the recommendation there was no concerns or issues that would result in capacity issues for the proposal itself. So the study provided the recommendation that there is additional capacity in local streets for additional residential traffic. Also, diverting residential traffic to local streets is best practice under the Transportation Association of Canada, so tax standards. So in absence of a countering traffic study, also by a similar qualified expert, resident opinion on perceived traffic concerns, in this instance would not qualify as meeting that threshold. So if the appellant did submit another traffic expert's opinion that there were issues or concerns, that would trigger new information would come to light and would trigger the threshold test. The applicant also suggests that access on Trainer Street was previously denied by the city, and he says this was advised by previous property owners as well as a previous councillor. There has been no submission or any direct evidence to corroborate this contention. One thing that I will bring up is that this contention is errors in the previous report, so the original report that I recommend for reconsideration, but these I will state were technical errors only. So there were incorrect PIDs that were referenced in the report, but the body of the resolution that council passed did specify the correct PIDs and the right property. As well as in the analysis, there was references to the previous zoning bylaw, but then when you cross-check that with the bylaw today, it was just quotation of the same policies. So again, technical minor errors in nature, nothing that would warrant the reconsideration itself. And then lastly, council followed the recommendation based on official plan policies in support for infill and density in built-up areas. The city's alleged failure to act in accordance with good planning principles and other alleged substantive errors or omissions listed by the appellant are not procedural defects or irregularities that would trigger reconsideration. Rather, these issues are best suited to be dealt with on an appeal to IRAC. And I can take any questions in regards to
Councillor Yankoff?
Thank you, Robert, for your report. I appreciate you simplifying it for me. I do have a concern, and it comes around the land use buffer. So in doing some research in the bylaw, I did notice that there seems to be some discrepancy in the 2006 zoning bylaw, which was replaced in October of 2018. And the 2018 bylaw about land use buffer, that if you're building residential and it buffers on commercial, there needs to be a 12-foot buffer. And I don't, so to me, that's where I see the reconsideration could come into place, because that's never been shared with committee. So I see that as something that we need to talk about and flush out. So in that respect, to me, that gives me enough right there that I would like to see some reconsideration on this. Thank you.
Robert? Response?
Yes, again, through Councillor Yankoff to the chair. That's correct. That was part of the technical reference there in the original report, was into the previous bylaw. Under the bylaw today, though, specifically section 662, land use buffers, we actually made that a requirement. So that approximately 13-foot landscape buffer is now outright requirement of any commercial proposal or multi-family proposal that would straddle the property line of a low-density development, such as a single detached dwelling in this case. So the original report actually recommended that development agreements be entered into to establish a buffer, but that would actually not be even necessary, because of today, under our standard requirements, the owner or developer would be required to install such a buffer along any common property line with a low-density development. So that would be captured at the permit stage itself.
So the buffer zone has been addressed?
Correct. Well, it would be addressed if council's decision stands and a permit would be issued.
Yes.
The permit would be issued, compliant site plan that shows that landscape buffer adjacent to any low residential density zone.
Right.
But it wasn't information ever shared with us prior to that. So that's, to me, that's new information.
The only it was shared was that in the original report it was referenced that a buffer should be established to buffer those sensitive land uses. And that's one of the reasons why it was requested that development agreement be entered into. So in a way it was shared, it was just, that was one of the conditions that the planner recommended be included in the development agreement, which again, under the bylaw today, would not be required, because it would have to be inserted, like they would have to accommodate a landscape buffer anyway, as of right, without a development agreement requirement.
So it's a course of normal doing business?
Yes, correct.
It's
It was amendment when we changed our landscaping
Yeah.
standards in the existing bylaws, so that was around the same time when we created tree species lists, as well as sighting distances from like utilities and things of that nature. So that was all included in our landscaping amendments.
yeah. So does that satisfy your concern, Councillor Yankoff?
It answers my questions.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Councillor McKay?
Yep, and I'm just gonna kind of piggyback on that too, Robert, because in June, when this application did come to our planning board, we were basically told that it was, the developer had an as-of-right build if we did not consolidate the lots. He had an as-of-right build with exit and access onto Trainer Street, right?
That's correct.
So then, you know, we approved it because it seemed like a simple application and it fit the community better as far as having, you know, 3 smaller buildings instead on more land space versus one. For me, that was my reason why I supported the consolidation initially. So in that then, you know, the residents were passionate and started asking many questions. Questions I couldn't answer for sure because I didn't have the information, I didn't understand, you know. C2 lots, I know, are they, when they're zoned C2, are they allowed to enter and exit onto a subdivided road? When I was reading, I saw that they were trying to keep them going out onto more of a, what's the, Malpeck Road or whatever, would be one thing, you know, the questions whether or not these lots were actually conforming lots or were they non-conforming lots initially? And are we able to consolidate non-conforming lots? So there's lots of questions that came out that would give me enough questions to say I would love an opportunity to have those questions answered to see if we are making the right decision.
Councillor McKay, we have to get back to those 3
Yeah,
blocks there.
but there
right?
is new information.
Which one are you presenting under now?
On all
Which
the,
block?
okay, where's the one about even the traffic, for example? When you look at your report, Robert, it was, you quoted basically the city street access bylaw. And when I tried to find that today, the city street access bylaw, the purpose was the traffic study to ensure control. We didn't see the traffic study, and apparently councillor of the area requested numerous times, didn't see the traffic study. We've known that Lower Malpeck Road, Capitol Drive, recently, there are concerns with traffic. So that could be considered new information.
Well, we're supposed to be centered, I hate to interrupt,
No,
Councillor McKay.
go ahead.
We're supposed to be centered on this resolution
Yeah,
of
I know.
council.
That's
which-
simple
That the request to consolidate a portion of the property along Trainer Street, PID, and with 18 Trainer Street be rejected.
Yeah, but it was with the purpose to build these 3, or these,
But that doesn't enter into it.
that was in the
Traffic
resolution.
doesn't, no, there's the resolution right there, it's on your desk.
Okay.
We're talking about lot consolidation.
I
That was
understand
the-
that, but for such a simple thing, there's been an awful lot of feedback that,
We have no control over that, Councilor McCabe. We are trying to figure out here, on those 3 titles or areas of concern up there, which one has been brought to the forefront in regards to this consolidation of these 2 lots, right?
That's correct, and I guess through to Councilor McKay, this we're looking for like the details of the traffic study, because the traffic study was brought into the original analysis from the previous planner. She did state that, you know, there was no concerns, you know, that the recommendation from the consultant was that there's existing capacity for the proposed builds. And I think that was also corroborated too with our manager of public works, Scott Adams, there as well, when he reviewed that study, the recommendations from that study. So I guess when I was referring to if a new traffic study was completed by the appellant, and they brought forward new information that might challenge the original recommendation of the original traffic report, then that would qualify under one of the criteria, threshold for reconsideration. But the report itself, like the planner, again, I think everyone knows these meetings can be long and arduous, but usually it is standard practice where the planner and staff would just report what the recommendation or conclusion of the study is, rather than getting into the finer details of it itself.
so can I, just for point of clarification, with the lot consolidation, if we had left it without consolidating, they still have the as-of-right build, entrance, exit onto Trainer Street. So the consolidation, what was the purpose of that? Just more units? for the
Correct.
developer?
Yeah, the lot consolidation was just to amass additional land for the unit count.
And what was the original unit count? Sorry, I'm just.
The original one, I believe, was 70 units is what they were proposing in 2019. 70, yes,
So it's less units, because he's only got 320s.
correct.
So Councillor McKay, we can't rehash the whole
No, I
case,
understand
so to
that.
speak.
Yeah.
We have to tie it back to one of these circumstances here to ensure that all that could be done was done at the time in relation to what this resolution here says. That's what that's our target.
I appreciate that, and I just think there's a lot of information, so I'm not, if there's so much of, now I'm just
Yeah,
confused.
okay.
Full disclosure.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Anyone else would like to speak to this issue? Do you have anything to add, Mr. Forbes?
I would just reaffirm, the purpose of the reconsideration is, again, on that test. It's a much narrower test than IRAC. IRAC is very wide. So whatever some of these discussions, depending on where this goes, IRAC reviews everything in detail. So the purpose of this is that if it's determined before we get to IRAC that there was a mistake, we can unwind that mistake and avoid going to IRAC. I guess what staff are indicating is we don't necessarily see a mistake. That doesn't mean to say that IRAC won't find something in this. So again, that's what Robert's job was, or staff job was, is to apply that test. It's a narrower test than IRAC, but where we are this evening, Robert is indicating that we don't see any procedural problems that occurred as a part of the decision making. But again, it will go to IRAC and they will rule on the application in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to add on this topic whatsoever? So this is the recommendation going to City Council next Monday night. Simply a recommendation. Okay, are we all ready for, Rosemary?
Thank you very much. I'm just wondering if the minor but technical mistakes that were made in the initial documentation will be an issue, and an issue that IRAC will consider.
We have information from our solicitor that no, they're not material. In fact, they were noted and they were corrected, but they had no material effect on any decision or any stance or position.
But Mr. Chair, they will look at it. They look at everything.
Yes.
So again, we have some background direction from our solicitor, but they look at it very comprehensively. So if they thought there was a problem there, they will articulate it. Just to clarify, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Okay. So are we ready for a motion? Do I have anyone that wants to move a motion in regard to this issue?
I will move a motion that we reconsider this application.
Okay, it's been moved by Elena Yankoff,
I'm going to
second by Julie McCabe. Is there any discussion on that issue? Hearing none. All those in favor of that motion? We are now moving on to the Tim Hortons. May Point Road, Capitol Drive, drive-through, doing the stacking plan. Pardon? You're the man of the hour on this one, Alex?
Well, I'm the man, I don't know about the hour, but folks, this is an application that's been around for some time. It's been in front of the board. We did have a fairly detailed meeting with it a week ago, last Friday. And at that time, the suggestion was that we could possibly go to a public hearing on this. After that meeting, we did review that with our solicitor, who suggested that going to a public hearing on something that doesn't require a public hearing and a bylaw is, that there may be concerns or issues as a result of that, setting precedent. Are we going to go to on all traffic studies on dealing with these type of things, because what is clearly not mandated. So as a result of that, council sent it back to this committee to make a decision. A lot of those questions were asked at the meeting. The traffic engineer was there that did the review from Crandall out of St. John. He was there with another engineer that dealt specifically with traffic circles. But the bottom line is, I'm just going to articulate where we are on this. So it had gone to the planning board. It was deferred back in August. So at that time, the recommendation of of staff was that the Tim Hortons people, the Cordova Realty, had agreed to put in, when you come out of their driveway onto May Point, a right turning lane. The cost of that was approximately $120,000. All the expenses are to be covered by them. That was to alleviate some pressure as vehicles were exiting the Tim Hortons property and that were heading back down Capitol Drive. So after the August meeting was deferred, there was a number of questions that were asked at that meeting that were technical in nature. I began to answer some of them, but as they became more technical, this isn't really my realm. I'm not a professional engineer. I was somewhat confident I knew the answers, but I wasn't 100% certain. So we did bring in Scott. We had some meetings, and as a result of those meetings and follow-up meetings with Cordova and staff, the hatched proposal in front of their driveway was put into the proposal as well. Right turn lane, cross hatching in front of the main access. The reason for that is when you're coming into Charlottetown from Cornwall, you turn to your right onto May Point and you want to make a left turning movement. They don't want people queuing there trying to make that movement. And as well as if the traffic circle is starting to back up in the morning, they don't want people queuing leaving May Point and heading either across the industrial park or up to Cornwall. They want to leave that gap open. So that was one of the reasons and rationale for that. So that's where things got left. After that August meeting, the city did pay for an additional work at Crandall, and Crandall looked at it. If that didn't solve the problem, what else could be done? And that involved another proposal, which is in your report, which involved reconfiguring the roundabout itself. When we conferred with the province on changing the roundabout, if it got to that point, the province was reluctant to support that. They were okay with the right turn lane, the cross hatching, closing the access if it becomes problematic. If the Cordova is required to close the primary access on May Point, then they'll be directed over to the DP Murphy entrance into the hotel, and that gets people away from the intersection. So it does do some things, but there's been a lot of discussion by councilors and others on this board as to, well, if all of those things don't work, all of the things that are on the table that are a part of the development agreement, my job is to put a development agreement together that either this board and council feels will solve problems there, and there shouldn't be any issues in the future. A lot of people ask me personally, can we guarantee? They ask traffic engineers, can we guarantee? I certainly can't guarantee, but I can facilitate whatever discussions that transpire. So Mr. Adams is here tonight to answer any of those questions as well. A lot of more technical questions were asked at the last meeting when the EXP, Mr. Elzagar was there on the WebEx. But really where we are right now is to make a decision. Is the board comfortable with this, with the development agreement as it's suggested in the report? If you're not, then that's up to you. Or if you think there's an additional measure that could be employed, that could be recommended to council, that if you feel that if in the worst case scenario, this should definitely take care of any issues that would happen at that location. I would indicate, on top of the fact that there is the proposed drive-through, it is a busy property anyways. There's gas pumps there, there's a drive-through, there's a convenience store. So it's not only the Tim Hortons drive-through that we're dealing with, but again, I'm hoping that through the discussion tonight and when it goes to council, that if the board and council is comfortable enough supporting it, that there is enough terminology in the development agreement that addresses these concerns if that traffic is spilling over in front of the Tim Hortons property on May Point Road and interfering with traffic. So, again, for those that were on the call, you can appreciate there was a lot of discussion, and I haven't gone all over those details yet again. And just for clarity, if anybody wants to ask me a question of what's on the table tonight from staff are supporting this proposal with the right turn lane, all at the developer's expense. They do the cross-hatching. In the wintertime, that was a question. What do you do in the wintertime? You put up these flashing lights and you say, don't block in between this area. There was some discussion that people don't always abide by that. I'm not sure that that's true. Some people may not be familiar with that tool or technique, I'm not certain. And then in the development agreement, the next, so that's the first portion that Tim Hortons would do immediately. But if that doesn't work, if the province calls Mr. Adams and says, wow, we're getting back up into our roundabout, we want you to put cameras out there immediately, and if over a 2-day period, Mr. Adams can determine that it is, the drive-through itself, the way people are entering and exiting that property is impacting the roundabout, then we would go to Cordova and say, in light of that, you're either going to have to close the store, or you're going to have to close your primary access, and you're going to have to work with Mr. Murphy to then go just utilize that driveway, and then the cars would start to queue up. They would come in onto the DP Murphy entrance into the hotel. That would pull them off of May Point a little bit, and then they would segue to the left into this development. So again, Mr. Adams has been patient. He's usually not at a lot of planning board meetings, but he's more capable to answer those more technical questions. And again, if anybody could see sort of a silver bullet that would resolve everybody's issues, it would be on the table, I think, tonight. I mean, on the other side of this equation, you have a business that has to know before they pursue opening the store that it can't be sort of ongoing, that they continually have to pay to fix infrastructure and things like that. So everybody has sort of a point where they of no return, where they can't really go that much further. But again, it's just a matter of, all I can do for you folks, once it's approved, is enforced within the development agreement, and that was a lot of the discussion on the call. Well, what if everything in the development agreement doesn't work? Who is then responsible? Well, then, the public is responsible, whether it's the province or the municipality, to try to improve things and to employ some measures. But again, I'm just hoping everyone's clear where we are from that last meeting we had on Friday, and Mr. Adams is here to answer any technical questions, or you can ask me any procedural questions as it's going on to council. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Forbes. Councillor Yankoff.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Forbes, for your report. When it comes to cross-hatching, I have driven up and down Kirkwood Street more than a dozen times since I was first introduced to that term, and I myself sat in that cross-hatching as well as everyone else with me. So that concerns me, even if the little flags are there in the winter when it's snow covering. I had asked a question last Friday, and even at that time when I asked, my concern was more about the left turn, not the right.
Correct, yeah.
And at that time, the traffic engineer did confirm to say that they don't have a solution for that. So that still concerns me. And my third concern is, when you say a development agreement, and then it's all in the agreement, and then something does go awry, you indicated that it would be the province and the municipality that would have to then cover the expenses for that. So we have no empowerment then to go back to the developer and say, hey, your stuff didn't work, pony up. It's back on us. Is that correct?
It is correct, but I guess what we've been striving, that's why this has been deferred a number of times.
Right.
Again, because there's some expenses that are significant expenses. This proposal went quiet for about a year as the developer was deciding themselves, can we actually afford to do this? Mm-hmm. So that's why it went quiet. So whatever we're proposing, the development agreement it's imposed by council. You can impose whatever you want. But for the most part, it's usually done with the knowledge from the applicant. If they just say, well, look, you can oppose all you want, but we just can't do it under those conditions. So we try to telegraph to them what they can expect in the development agreement. So thus far, they're comfortable signing a development agreement. It's a little bit more detailed about what will happen in regard to that sequencing of if these measures don't work initially, and then the closing of the driveway access. That's a significant concession on behalf of the developer, because if you close the primary access, that's the primary access for all of those other businesses as well. So yeah, again, I think that they're thinking that they're not going to have to do it, or they're hoping they're not going to have to do it, but our job is to try to understand what we can anticipate based upon the study, and what mitigating measures can we employ to ensure that it doesn't happen. And the time horizons on traffic studies tend to be around 5 years, because there's other conditions also changing out there. There's more traffic in the city. More development on the other side of the road can impact the amount of traffic that's there. So these things aren't typically signed indefinitely. So it's usually a 5-year horizon.
Right. And just as a follow-up on that meeting last Friday, Mr. Adams had an excellent point when he indicated that there was going to be a lot of future development in that area. So then, it was suggested that why don't we just get it right in the first place and get it all done. And so I thank Scott for bringing that point
Sure.
up. Yeah. So
Yeah, it is.
thank you.
It's not a. These drive-throughs, the reason it's in the bylaw itself that it needs these technical reviews, because drive-throughs and certain types of drive-throughs are very, they have the potential to impact the road network. This one is a little bit more complicated because it's the road network and there's an adjacent roundabout. Again, I think everybody's been operating in good faith. I think the developer has been trying to work with us in regard to whatever they feel that they can reasonably employ to respond to our concerns. But I don't want to lead on some of these questions. If the road is backing up or there's problems in the future, all I can do is leverage and rely on the report that was provided to us. But again, you folks, I know that this is one of the few applications where I think a lot of counselors and I think a lot of the members have been out to look at the site and just sort of get their head around all of the moving parts that are happening on that property. So again, my job is I'm going to try to get it right. If you want a development agreement, what should be in it that we all feel will protect the interest of the municipality. But if you feel that there's not enough tools in our toolbox, well then the other alternative is that you have to indicate that we don't think that we're comfortable where we are now, because we feel that it will impact negatively on the road network.
Thank you, Mr. Forbes. Questions of Mr. Forbes?
Or Mr. Adams.
Mr. Adams, who's behind me, I'll ask, maybe Mr. Forbes can be the traffic police officer here and direct any traffic related to Mr. Adams. Any questions of Mr. Forbes? Basil?
In regards to what was just mentioned a minute ago there about further expansion, there is NV lot there between the car wash and the hotel. Assuming someday that will be developed, is the thought that the traffic would be coming in that, as Alex said, that main road entry point off of Bay Point Road that would also serve as that one as well?
Yeah.
Is there any thought given to that?
Well, the primary access will always be from May Point, because that's where that's where the traffic is coming from. It's coming into town. It's either heading into town and it's turning right and then wants to make a left in. Again, the traffic study does indicate there are different periods of the day when people are either leaving the city and that there's some high times that it's actually later in the day that the traffic volumes are more significant, how it impacts traffic. The morning is when the business is making its money. Again, Mr. Adams can talk a little bit more, but that's not the issue. In the morning when the business is making its money, it's later in the afternoon where traffic starts to get tied up there because people are exiting the city and then they're entering this facility for all kinds of other reasons. Maybe they're picking up gas. But yeah, I mean, that was a concern that the right turn movement that is being proposed, that alleviates one problem, but that's only for people heading back into town. And there is a lot of traffic that's either going through the roundabout, they're heading over to the industrial park, or they're weaving back up to Cornwall. And so, again, there was a lot of modeling done on this, and again, it wasn't given short shrift. It's been looked at a number of times. So back to the on Capitol Drive, you got a right in and a right out. Even though that sounds ideal, Councilor Rivard, I think, had alluded to when you're coming down Capitol Drive, you've just been through the roundabout, and you're coming down Capitol Drive. People kind of veer off and come in on that right turn lane fairly fast. So if you were wanting to be leaving, you can navigate out, and then you're going to have to drive by that right turn movement and then get to the other side to get to the left to go back out. That's just achieving what this right turn lane was going to do anyways. And because of the high speeds, sometimes the way it comes off the traffic, it may not be ideal for all of the traffic to try to navigate down past the first right turn in to get to the right turn out. I mean, it's just, there's some speed issues there. So. Anyway, again, my colleague there is likely more articulate on these things than I am. So if I missed anything, Scott, or if you feel that we're trying to get this to a point where we can make a decision. I think the developer, again, operating in good faith, but I think they just need a decision one way or the other. And we're here to answer any questions you may have. The development agreement is what it is proposed in the report. If you think there was something else that we could add that could possibly resolve these future issues, but there's been a lot of discussion on this thus far. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Adams, do you want to add anything at this time, or are you good?
I think I'm good. I think Mr. Forbes covered everything quite well. He's learned a lot in the past few years.
Any other questions from the floor? Basil?
One more comment. Would there be an opportunity then, Scott, to put in a right-hand lane where the entrance right in and right out is now, but actually make that a lane so people who are coming down could veer off and then pull into that entrance? So you're not in the throughway traffic?
There's always the possibility. You'd have to look at how much right-of-way is there, or who would have to buy it or provide the right-of-way there. I think we're quite tight up on right-of-way. I'm not 100% certain without knowing the property layouts at the moment. So yes, there's always a possibility of putting it in. Is it 100% necessary? I believe the warrants say 60 and below. So 60 kilometers and below does not require a slip lane or a decel lane for that, but 60 and above would. So that lane technically does not need it. And it is a short gap, so some people are flying out of there, but the majority wouldn't be getting up to a speed that is a reckless speed. You're not getting up to 60 by the time you get down there unless you're really flooring it really at the end of the day coming out of the roundabout. So it could go in there, but it's a warranted no. I don't believe so at this moment.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Adams or Mr. Forbes? Rich?
Just with cross-hatching, is that a ticketable offense?
I would assume so. Right by the police station, they have signs on both sides. Don't park in
That's what I was going to
it.
say. I've been by Kirkwood many times,
Yeah.
and I've seen the police have to wait to turn in.
Yeah, I know.
There's no tickets.
Yeah.
The enforcement component of it, you might as well save the pain.
Yeah, 98% don't know what it is.
I know. It's quite a learning curve.
Yeah.
That's my concern, is the human behavior part. Yeah,
Right.
we don't follow the rules.
Some don't.
Okay, I'm ready for a motion from someone to do something. I guess what is before us is the acceptance of the Crandall Engineering traffic report. Is that true?
Correct, yeah.
To permit a drive-through at Tim Hortons Restaurant, stacking and queuing spaces, as proposed in the above-mentioned traffic study and shown as Appendix A, as well cross-hatching provisions across the entrance to this property and the signing of a development agreement. Is that the essence of what we want to do here tonight?
It is, Mr. Chair, and on your desk there's a little schematic. That resolution is referring to primarily the right turn lane, but that schematic there tonight is showing where the cross-hatching would be if anybody's, it's a little bit more detailed, so just wanted to have that in the record that that's really what we're dealing with, right turn lane and the cross-hatching we're proposing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to get it on the table.
Okay, it's been moved by Bob Kenny, seconded by, we just want it on the floor with a seconder. You don't have to be for or against anything, just to move it along. Do we have a seconder? Second by Julie McCabe, as before mentioned narrative from the book, the blue book. Any discussion on that proposal, that motion? Boy, quite a crew tonight. All right, now somebody's going to have to do something. All in favor of the motion, raise your hand. All those opposed to the motion? Good heavens. Okay, thank you. The motion is dies by a 6-1 score? No, 7-1 score. Thank you. Moving back to the original agenda we have, way back, we'll bring us to next on the agenda, 190 Houston Street. Robert, do you want to take it away?
Chair. So the request before you tonight is a major variance. The request is basically the lot frontage variance. To vary the minimum required lot frontage in the downtown mixed-use neighborhood zone from the required 20 meters or 65.6 feet to approximately 12.7 meters, 41.9 feet, in order to allow for the approved 4-unit converted dwelling into include a 5th dwelling unit, so it would be 5 units in total. So this is the subject property, as you can see. It's located on the south of Houston Street, and it's located in the downtown mixed-use neighborhood zone, so DMUN zone. There's some history to this property, as you've probably guessed from reading your reports. So initially in 2014, an application a building permit was applied for through our office to convert what was once a single detached dwelling into 4 dwelling units. So it's a converted dwelling, basically, up to a maximum of 4 units. The bylaw of the time, which was the previous bylaw for this one, did specify that any of these single detached dwelling could be approved as maximum 4 converted units for a converted dwelling. So that was the application. It was approved. However, beside the 2014 approval date and recent legal inquiry or zoning inquiry that we received this year, an additional 5th unit was installed in this building without a permit. This is the subject building itself. The 5th unit that was constructed without a permit is located in the basement. So once we found out that there was a 5th additional unit, we did our property research. We found that permit clearly stated 4 maximum, and we sent the fire inspector to take a look at the unit to ensure that, or just to take note to see if there's any major life safety compliance issues. Upon the fire inspector's inspection, they found that there was an compliance issue with the egress out of the basement suite. So that order was released to the property owner, who then came in to our office and submitted an application for a variance. As you know, the first step into legalizing these units is to get approval so that the zoning matches the entitlements. So in this case, he is applying to reduce the minimum lot frontage requirement to allow this additional unit. So that's the subject property, the basement unit access and stuff like that, as you can see is over there. That's the property itself, so that's situated behind where the parking is located. And when I was doing my site inspection, it appears that 188 and 190 Houston Street, they both share this common parking area. They also store their refuse bins and waste containers there as well. So when we did an analysis ourselves, we found that this request would be an additional request almost to expand a legal non-conforming use, and that's because under the bylaw today, the proposal wouldn't have even been permitted outright to have 4 units. Now that was changed to state that even a converted dwelling, the number of units would be dictated by the frontage. So hypothetically, if the owner at that time, which I believe was a different owner, came in today to legally install 4 units, they would have to apply through the same frontage variance because it wouldn't be outright permitted. And that, again, that was a policy or regulation change in the zoning bylaw to ensure that there was an appropriate amount of units for the lot frontage, and lot frontage usually dictates the size of the lot to accommodate anything extra that could come with additional residential dwelling units, like garbage collection and parking. So did the analysis, and staff just determined that to expand an already legal non-conforming situation would be to further erode those requirements of the zoning and bylaw today. So I'm free to ask any questions, and the applicant and the owner is here tonight, Brooke McMillan. He is present, so he can again speak to the application or answer any of your questions that you might have as well. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Yankoff, do you want the owner to come in first, or do you want the owner?
I'm fine. We have seen many, especially in my ward. We had 2 last year on Weymouth Street. 2 new people bought a couple of apartment buildings, new in the business. Sure enough to find out, and I'm not exactly accurate, I think they were zoned as 4 units and they had 6, and we went through this process, and you know, we were looking at a housing crisis. We were also looking at that they had been put in there at some other time. The owners were willing to pay whatever permit fees and fines that went with it. They were also willing to bring everything up to code, working with fire and the building inspectors, which is very similar to the owner of this building. And so until we start looking at saying no all the time, we can't say no sometimes and no not always. So to me, I will be supporting the 5th unit in this building, providing they pay, hopefully there's a permit fine for not getting one if it was them that did it, and work with the building inspector, work with the fire inspector, and bring this 5th unit up to code, and hopefully somebody can stay living downtown because of it. Thank you.
I just have a question. I read through this material. Where did the 6th unit, is there 6 units tonight up at 190 Houston Street?
Just 5.
5, 1 additional over the limit.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I thought you referred to a 6th unit there, which was the 4 units are, okay, the 5th unit is in the basement.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay,
So
when you gave the back shot there,
yes.
that was the 4th unit you were,
so this is just the back shot of the subject property,
Yeah.
and the egress situation that
Yeah.
the fire inspector caught was in that.
Was in the
on that
basement.
side.
Was in the
Yes,
basement.
correct, the basement unit, which I believe is the 5th.
okay, thank you. Do we ask the board if they want the applicant in, or do we just, is it usual custom just asking it?
You can, if he wants to speak, by
Yeah,
all means.
if you want, Robert, if you want to, Brooke wants to come in,
Sure.
now's the time.
Yep.
Thank you. Hello, Brooke, how you doing?
How you doing?
Good, good. You want to say a few words to the planning board?
Well, hello. Guys, my property, whether you know or you don't know, I own fair home, I own everything on the other side of the block. And I take a lot of time and effort in taking care of my property. And I tell you, this is an oversight on my side, that the 5th unit is there. But at the end of the day, I don't know if you guys know what I'm up against across the street. I'm sure you must do. There's lots of housing units, which is single bedroom units that are certainly hurting our community. So I take great value in what I do with our property and keeping it up to snuff and making sure it's well handled, well managed. And in regards to getting it back up to if there is any egress problems, and I've never gotten a letter from the city of what it is. I knew there was something, but I didn't know what it was. We're certainly deal with that. If there's any fines or penalties, we're certainly do that as well. There's another option that I can certainly discuss. It's the parking. There's presently 21 parking spots on that spot, and 2 of them are out front. So we could certainly close off the 2 out front. That would give us some more green space. That would be great for the city. That's no problem for us to do as well. So if that needs to be done, no problem. Other than that, do you guys have any questions for me? Yes.
Rosemary?
I had a question about when you purchased the property.
I'd say about 3 years ago.
So the building permit that was issued in 2014 was to the previous owner?
Yeah, not to me.
Okay, because when I read the documentation, I was quite concerned about the issues that were raised by the fire inspector, especially when the 5th apartment is in the basement.
Well, as I said, I've never received that. I've asked the city. I have not received that letter. And they said that I'd get that letter after this meeting takes place, more or less. So I can't address it on what I don't know. So something I didn't ask.
Okay.
Yes.
Anyone else? Rich?
In terms of what would you do to make that 5th apartment?
What would I do to fix it?
Yeah, what do you do to fix, based on the picture we're looking at right there?
That picture doesn't tell you anything. The apartment's actually off to the side. It's on the far side.
Well, it's on the far end of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually to the right of the stairs. So if there is an issue,
Yeah.
as I said, I'll fix it.
So when they talk about egress though, are they talking about just the window sizes, right?
No, the egress and the windows are correct. I'd have to say it's the stairs. Well, itself, it might be, I might have to move a tub that's above it and just move it around. That's how I see it, and that's the easiest fix to it.
Okay.
But
Yes.
thank you, Chair. At the bottom line, you have agreed that you will do what you need to do
Absolutely.
to bring this up, which is...
Meet the needs of what planning board puts in front of me, and I'll make sure it gets done.
Is the
Yeah,
unit
Chris.
rented now?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, as we all know, there's many units in the city that are unplanned or not don't have the proper permits and so on and so forth. So I certainly feel if I'm isolated on this, my gosh, that's a bad place to be. We're in a housing crisis, so that was really the part of it, why I did it, and kind of go from there.
Okay, anyone else? We okay? Everybody cool? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank
Brooke?
Thanks for letting me speak, guys. I didn't know I was going to, but it's all good. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, any further discussion?
I think I asked this at the last meeting, what's the penalty for them coming in with work already done and applying for the permit?
Robert?
Yes, through the chair, so basically, it's usually just double a permit fee.
Which is?
In this case, you would have to submit an assessment of how much the work cost, and then from that, fee would be determined on the percentage of the valuation of that work, and then it would just be doubled. And that would be, that's
Typically, what would they be?
hard for me to comment considering I
Yeah.
don't know what the nature, extent of the work you
Yeah.
would have to, but usually it's like a $50.
It's like $5.50 for every
Yeah.
1,000.
Yeah.
So if it's a $10,000 job, it's $55.
Yeah.
$55 penalty?
Well, it'll be
I guess
100.
that's why this is the 4th meeting in a row we've had a request for a permit the work's already done.
Right.
And until we deal with that, it'll always be like that.
Or in this case, it's not done yet.
Right.
The egress. You're talking about the egress, Bob?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be the cost of converting that into a unit. So it would be more money, I guess, like more work would have been required to, yeah, that's right.
It's not much. The penalty's not much.
No.
Councillor Yankoff.
And although this comment really has nothing to do with this applicant, but that's probably something we need to put on for a future meeting, that if we want to stop this from happening, we need to put in some stiffer penalties going forward, or we're going to be visiting these things forever and a day. So that's just my 2 cents worth. That's all I got.
Yeah, I think the applicant would be a good landlord. He'd do everything
Yes.
he had to, but it's not always going to be the case.
No. Councillor McKay.
And I guess I'm starting to see why, when you recommend not to make an exception for one property, because they seem to keep coming forward, and until we have stiffer regulation, we're kind of in a challenge to, I think it was 2 meetings ago on Park Street, or, nice cleaned up property, yeah, put the 5th unit in his building, here we are again, willing to do all the work.
I think we have the bylaw is quite sufficient, but we're just not enforcing it. That's our problem. We're great at writing or enacting bylaws. We're great at educating, or somewhat, but enforcement, we're not very good at. This is why.
Is that enforcement thing that we're kind of introduced to, is that moving along? Where we're going to be able to be a little bit, what did Philip Mayor call it?
Well, we're looking at that, but that's just a tool that's become available, let's say, in the last, it's through the MGA, so we have to.
But it's better than a $50 fine.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
but again, it's been a historical issue, but again, I mean, to the chair's point, I mean, you can, the decision is yours to say yes or no, so I mean, that's the core of it. If you say yes, we'll make sure that he gets a permit, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. And on that note, do I have a mover?
Question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Comment, please, yeah.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think we do need to have something in place, like if we need a bylaw, we need to firm up the bylaw, or we need to live by the bylaw that we have. We need to do that because almost every meeting there's something coming forward where people have done something that they don't have a permit for. And, it's very difficult for the people who go through the process of getting a permit.
Okay.
So I think if we're going to continue to review these applications, we need to have something and be consistent with how we implement it.
Yep. I agree. I've been watching from outside this room.
Yeah.
And you're right. There's almost every night we have somebody on bended knee.
Chair.
Councillor Basil.
A lot of these individuals that are coming forth are experienced developers.
Yeah.
And they're not just one-offs seen. So they know what the rules are.
Yeah.
But it's
Agreed.
asking for forgiveness afterwards.
Yeah. Councillor Yankoff.
Yeah, and my last time, thank you. I would comment that, and this is of no disrespect to the planning staff, but I see that part of it could be, you're right, experienced developers, but also the time. I've seen some of these planners' desks, and I don't know how they can get through a day. So that could be an overarching problem too, that these planners are overworked and there's just no way to get to it. So developers get frustrated and they just think, just right. And so there's a bigger problem there too. And like I say, that's of no disrespect to the planning department, more of a concern for what we might need to do to go forward.
Thank you. Chris.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. If we're gonna do a bigger penalty, I deal with this weekly in my business. I'd almost like to see, just a suggestion, a 2-tiered system, because people buy properties that building was there when they bought it. You know what I mean? Now there is people that build in the wrong areas without permits and that, but that's what makes it very hard in my world, because they bought that house 10 years ago and that building was on the line, which it shouldn't have been, but they've inherited that problem, right? I know that's not the case here, but if we're gonna do something down the road, you may wanna look almost at a 2-tiered system, that if they bought something that was, that was,
Illegal,
yeah,
non-conforming.
or non-conforming, then maybe there's a different way we could deal with those people instead of, because I know every week I hear something in my business when you're pricing property.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just a suggestion.
The reason these are coming before is for, it's the property, is when they try to sell the property, and they need to get confirmation from the city, and we review the file. And so it's more pervasive for lawyers to make sure they've got those letters, because if they don't, it falls back to the real estate agent or the lawyer for whoever did the sale. So that if somebody buys something that there's issues with it, so that's why we're seeing more and more of these.
And not all lawyers seem to do searches when it comes to units.
Right, yeah, I agree.
Best practice needs to be improved, perhaps.
So the planning department has recommended the lot frontage variance application be rejected. So do we have a motion for that, or 180 to that, or something to put some wheels
I'll
on
put
it?
a 180 motion on that.
Okay.
I motion that we allow the applicant to proceed with the fifth unit, providing that he pays the permit penalty, works with the inspectors, and brings it up to code.
Okay, do I have a seconder to that? Moved by Councillor Yankoff, seconded by Reg, that the request be approved. Any discussion on that point? Having none, all those in favor? All those opposed? 3 opposed, 5 in favor? Is that what it was? 5-3? Anybody counting heads? Rosemary, you counting heads? Have we got 8 in the room? That's a good start.
Yeah, it was
I
Okay.
counted 2 opposed, but I think
2
I
opposed?
counted-
Who
I think-
opposed?
I think I was confused with Rosemary. She's
Bobby
on the right
Basil,
side
3
up.
opposed.
Sorry.
So 5-4?
5:30.
No, oh yeah, I meant to say 3. Sometimes when I talk, 3 can
forget.
4.
That's new numbers.
Thank you. Next issue on the docket is 24 Water Street, having to do with a fire escape. Okay, you ready to go, Greg?
Yeah, so this is, we received a building permit application to convert the existing 5-unit apartment building at 24 Water into a 6-unit. As part of that plan, they requested to locate a fire escape at the rear of the property. Previous applications for the design of the fire escape, it is a designated heritage resource, so it has been to Heritage Board 3 times now with revised plans. Most recently, the current proposal was approved on September 30th from Heritage Board. Apparently the fire inspector and building inspector have also looked at the plans and are okay with them. But essentially what they're looking to do is construct the fire escape at the rear of the property, 1 foot from the property line. The minimum requirement is 3.9 feet. So in staff's opinion, it is difficult to review these applications when the applicant has shown the ability to meet the bylaw. They are deciding to change the plans that don't meet the bylaw, and then staff are in a position where they have to either recommend for or against it. That being said, all other departments have looked at it, so the Heritage Board, the Fire Department, and the Building Code. Really the idea with this change is that the windows to the apartments are not blocked, so they altered the stairs to accommodate the existing layout of the building. So ultimately, staff are in support of the application. The property owners of 24 Water also own the building on the corner under construction, so there really aren't any affected property owners per se that aren't themselves. So I'll make that note about showing that they have the ability to meet the bylaw, but they are proposing a variance to 1 foot, and in this case, staff are recommending for it.
Okay, I just note that some of these people write letters to us, and I think they might write them as though nobody ever reads the letters. This one here from a person says, we own the properties for the applicant's variance to slightly decrease the required setback for an exterior fire escape from 3.9 feet, 4 feet in other words, to approximately 1 foot, which is a 75% variance. And he's saying to a slightly decrease, more than slightly, it's 75%.
I think you'll notice that letter is from the property owner of this building who also owns a adjacent property.
Yeah, but that doesn't forgive him from saying a 75% change is a slight decrease. I mean, you should have read the letter. Anyway,
I was
Councilor
just going to
McCabe.
move that we support staff's recommendation and not have a lot on.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilor McCabe, seconded by Councilor Yankoff, that the request for, what address is it, 23, 24? 24 Water Street be approved as requested. Is that enough to put together? Any discussion? Any discussion at all? All those in favor? All those opposed? And that's means 7-0. Does it, Julie? Moving on, 20 Babineau Avenue.
That's correct.
Major variance to front yard setback and major variance to loading and unloading facilities. This is Canadian Tire one, is it? Yeah. Who's doing this one?
There are 8 of us here, not 8.
There's
Oh, it's 3?
There's 8 of us.
You count me?
Not counting your 9.
Oh,
sorry. You only had 7 when Chris was out.
Okay, I gotta change, Laurel, I have to change my bookkeeping here. Okay, thanks. It's all yours, Laurel.
Okay, so this application is per section 3.9 major variances, and it's for 2 variances of 20 Babineau Avenue, and the property is located in the shopping center commercial zone C3, right here. So the first variance is for a front yard setback variance, and the front yard setback for this property is located along Spencer Drive. The minimum front yard setback in the C3 zone is 39.4 feet as per this section 26.2 of the bylaw. I don't think this pointer works very well, but if you look to the north side of the building, that would be the area where where the expansion is going to be located. So the green area that you're seeing there, there's a little bit of a brown area right in behind that is where it's going to be expanded, and that's where they're requesting the variance for the front yard setback. So the applicants are proposing an addition of approximately 27,805 square feet to the existing retail building. And the proposed addition is set back 55 feet from the property line abutting Spencer Drive. This more than meets the setback requirement. So the main wall of the building will be 55 feet from the front yard setback to from the main wall of the building to the property boundary. But they're requesting the variance for the garden center, and the proposed garden center encroaches into the minimum front yard setback. And the request is to decrease that front yard setback from 39.4 feet to approximately 12 feet. So the main facade of the building, the front of the building, Canadian Tire, it faces the internal parking lot, so you can see the parking area. And that's Babineau Avenue, and Babineau Avenue is a private street. So the proposed expansion will be added to the south elevation of the building facing Spencer Drive, which is a public street. The south elevation of Spencer Drive is considered the front yard setback for 2 reasons. Spencer Drive is a public street, and it's the narrowest portion of the lot. And although the applicant has applied for the variance to reduce the front yard setback from 34 feet to 12 feet, it could be argued that the applicant is more than exceeding the required front yard setback for the building because of the main wall that I explained earlier. It's 55 feet. So the proposed garden center, the green area, it's actually fenced in, and it's a fenced-in compound, and it's not a roof structure. And typically a garden center would be a roof structure with a greenhouse that would have walls. In most instances, under the bylaw, staff would view an outdoor fenced-in area as outdoor storage. And that would only require 19.7 feet under the bylaw for a front yard setback to the property boundary. The applicant has proposed 12 feet. And although the south elevation of the building is technically considered the front yard setback, this elevation is the side of the building and it's not the front. So if you were going down Spencer Drive, you're seeing the side of the building. There's Spencer Drive, and then further on is the parking lot for the Towers Mall. So if we looked at that as, we didn't take the technical requirement of that being the front yard, that side yard would only require 5 feet to the fenced-in area under section 5.13 outdoor operations. So the applicant, they have agreed to landscape the area, the 12-foot setback from the garden center, the fenced-in area, to the front property boundary, and that's required under section 5.3 of the bylaw, landscaped areas. And given the particular surrounding this request, staff do not feel it's out of context for the area to approve that setback to the front yard. So the second variance request is to waive the requirement for an additional 3 loading bays. So if you look at the blue area, there's right in behind that there is a loading bay, and there's 3 loading bays there. Under section 43.9 of the bylaw, council may, after receiving a recommendation from planning board, waive the loading space requirement. So Canadian Tire has indicated that the receiving operation for the store will not change in light of the expansion, and they intend to use the same 3 loading bays. These bays will not be reduced, and they have indicated that the additional space is to display larger seasonal items. It's just to give more space. They're going to be using the same kind of retail area, but it's not like more shelves of stock and stuff. It's more to display things like barbecues and outdoor furniture, seasonal items at Christmas, those kinds of things. So given the explanation provided by the applicant outlining their operations, staff does not view this as an unreasonable request either. So as per section 3.93 of the bylaw, on October 16th, notice of the planning board meeting was sent to property owners within 100 meters of the property. And in the letter, we requested their opinions on the proposed variance. The deadline to submit the written request was October 30th, 2020. And in response to the letter, we haven't received any letters back from the public. So staff are therefore recommending for approval of both variances.
Thank you, Laurel. Any questions of Laurel?
I just have one quick
Yeah.
comment. Thank you, Laurel. That was a great report. Pretty straightforward, it appears. There's nothing else that we need to know to be able to make this decision. Like, you've covered everything. There's nothing else there that you might go, shoot, we didn't know that.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, anything else? No? Anything else? Reg?
I move that we accept.
Okay, moved by Reg McGinnis, seconded by Chris Fournier, that the Canadian Tire application for adaptations to grounds and loading area be approved as presented. Discussion, question? All those in favor? All those opposed? 8-0. Thank you, Laura. Moving on is a couple of lots next to Belvedere to the new building, the new dormitory building at UPEI on 9395 Belvedere. Greg?
Yeah, so
Take
we
it away.
received a complaint on August 28th regarding a construction camp that was set up, basically trailers and gravel surface for parking on the 2 separate properties on Belvedere Avenue. They are both located in the low-density residential R2 zone, adjacent to the new residence under construction at UPEI. So essentially, the temporary construction trailers are located there for the crew working on the university building, but they did not receive a permit to do so. So essentially, our bylaw allows construction trailers to be located adjacent to a property But in this case, they are on a separate property, not on the same property that where the building is being constructed. It is on a separate property. It is a residential property. So essentially they have to apply for a variance for a temporary structure. They have indicated to us in the past that they'd be looking to consolidate these R2 properties and rezone them with the rest of the campus proper. But at this time, they're looking to resolve the situation for a 1-year period only. So the variance would be the approach to do that. After 1 year, if the building isn't completed, they either would have to reapply for variance or follow that rezoning process. So staff are, like most applications, they're difficult to review when the work has been done and it's been there. But in this case, they are required structures for such a development at UPEI. They are on property owned by UPEI. The adjacent property on the corner of Belvedere and University is also under construction. And the single detached dwelling that kind of borders all of UPEI campus is, they did not submit a letter of opposition or any letter for that fact. So ultimately, our official plan says that one objective is to work with the UPEI to keep abreast of their needs and come to resolutions of their issues. So staff are ultimately recommending approval for 1 year, but in next year we anticipate a rezoning to happen or another variance, I guess.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Any questions of Greg?
Just
Bob?
one.
Bob?
Mr. Chair, that's a residential property just to the east of them.
Yeah, so the single.
And you said the complaint didn't come from there.
I know.
Well, there's no other residences around there. Can you say where the complaint came from?
It wasn't a local resident. It was just, I think, a traveling public, essentially.
Right.
That had concerns that they knew that they were residential properties. There was a house on,
Yes.
right beside the former Subway recently. So I think they knew that it was a residential property and saw the trailers being parked there and the gravel put in, but
So,
yeah, it's not an adjacent property owner.
Thank you.
Councilor Yankoff?
I believe those trailers went up around April, so does the 1 year begin when they were first there or when they tried to come up to?
No, that's a good question. Really, the variance is valid for 1 year, so once they receive the variance from council, if they do, it'll be 1 year from the date of council approval. But yeah,
So they got all that other time for,
it's a valid concern, yeah.
yeah, that's not cool,
Yeah,
yeah. And did they get a fine? Do they have to?
yeah, the same boat, they'd have
Same
to
thing,
double
yeah.
the fee, and that temporary construction trailer would be $50 per fee.
Okay, anyone else?
Thank you.
Okay,
If
could I have a mover?
if they own the property, why don't they just rezone it?
I think that is their long-term intention, just to resolve this situation. The rezoning is probably 4 or 5 months, so to Councilor Yankoff's point is they basically get another 4 or 5 months of it being there without it being resolved. So I think they want to temporarily resolve the issue and then deal with it properly after, kind of close the gap now.
Could I have a mover? Moved by Shallon, second by Basil, that the application by university, is the university actually?
Yeah.
Yeah, to have two construction yards right there on an annual basis be approved. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? Passed 8, nothing. Thank you. Thanks, Craig. Craig Drive, Norwood Road, PD 192401. You doing this one also, Greg?
That's me.
Okay.
So this application to rezone the portion of the vacant property on the corner of McRae and Norwood. It wasn't from the board last month, so I won't go into too much detail, but it is located in the R1L zone. A portion would be proposed for the R2 zone. If approved, there would be 30 semi-detached dwellings, so 60 units, 5 single-attached dwellings, and then obviously the landscaped open space and the proposed public street. So just for reference, the photo on the left is the original application that was in front of the board 2 years ago, I'll say. And the photo on the right is the current proposal. So I would just note that the proposal on the right is slightly different than what you saw last month. When the surveyor actually went out and took the measurements, there was some inconsistent lot areas. So they altered it slightly. The density isn't any different, but the lot areas are slightly different. So on October 13th, council passed a resolution to proceed to public consultation. That took place on October 27th. There was 1 letter of support received, 2 letters of opposition received. There was a couple that came in after the deadline, but only 3 letters in total prior to the deadline. And at the public meeting, there was 2 residents who spoke in opposition. So some of the concerns was the industrial properties located directly across the street on Norwood Road, so to the south of the site plan on the screen. So essentially, staff went through our old files. 1998, it illustrated that those properties were located in the industrial M1 zone, but as 1999, they were in the R1 residential zone. So at some point between 88 and 99, they were rezoned. They would be legal non-conforming uses in the R1L zone. There's concerns about traffic and how the McCrae Drive does not have sufficient lighting, sidewalks, just general infrastructure on the road. So typically, that is not something the applicant can put in place, but they are valid concerns that should be addressed at some point. The previous application, when it did get discussed, there was concerns that the properties across from McCrae Drive should mirror what is on the other side. In this case, it would be R1. So you can see all of the property that's indicated 230 McCrae Drive is R1. The applicants are contesting that where there is residential dwellings, they are putting R1. So they're matching where the residential dwellings exist and where the vacant property is. They're proposing R2 instead. So the application does have support in the official plan. The proposed rezoning aligns with our future land use map. They wouldn't have to get an official plan designation change. And the applicant is attempting to match land uses across the street to what is existing, not what the zoning is, in an attempt for a compromise. So it's not fully what was being requested, but it is an attempt to achieve that. But ultimately, staff are recommending approval of the rezoning.
Thank you, Greg. Any questions of Greg?
I have a question, yes, please, thank you. Thank you, Greg, for your report. There's no question the developer does wonderful work, for sure. He takes a lot of pride in the work he does. It's a really nice subdivision out our way. Saying that, thank you for also recommending that the city consider better infrastructure out there because we're blowing up. So development's great, but we do need to be able to support that. The R1 lots on McCrae, from what reading your report, it's indicated that R1 straight down would better align with the East Royalty Master Plan. Was I reading that incorrectly? Or the front-facing McCrae Drive lots should all kind of be R1s, and then everything else could be zoned R2s?
When we went through the East Royalty Master Plan, that was one of the things that was a point of discussion, was always to match what was across the street from existing, because there was a lot of vacant land, so we were giving that designation the same as what was across the street. In this circumstance, what they are proposing is slightly different. We brought that up with the applicants, and they weren't willing to change the portion along McCrae Drive to single attached.
With that though, on those 5 lots, right? Because they're all technically zoned R1. So if you know, that's a pretty good compromise when you're looking at 30 R2s instead. With that also, I mean, they can put single detached dwelling with an accessory suite, right?
Yeah.
If he wanted to look at those kind of an
And they
option.
likely could get more, the density change might not be as drastic as you'd think, like 2 to 1, because the lot requirement size for an R1 is smaller than an R2, so they, maybe they could get 7 single attached dwellings instead of the 10 semi-detached. It's not a perfect 10 to 5 kind of thing.
And Chair, I guess for me, because the residents of the area are really pushing to have the front, the lots facing McRae Drive, as kept as R1. If that could be maintained, I would be more than happy to support the rezoning for the other 30 lots, excuse me. But I would really like to see those 5 extra lots maintained as R1s.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just
Dr. Hancock?
I took a drive out there, and I tend to agree with Councillor McKay, how nice that neighborhood would sustain itself if there were all along the front facing the single units. And I wonder if there was any way that we could return to the applicant in hopes that they may take a second thought at doing those single homes instead out front.
Yeah,
I'd
I
like to
think
see that to support it.
when we previously went through this process, they had a neighborhood meeting and that was requested upon them. They decided not to proceed with that. We brought it up again during this application. They recommended not to. So I think ultimately it's a decision of either saying yes or no, or if there is a compromise you guys want to recommend or approve, that could also be prudent. But I think going back to them wouldn't help the situation. We've gone a few times with them now. And
Even with the option of the accessory suites?
yeah, they're aware, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Chris?
When you say they recommended not to, I missed you there. Who's they?
The developer had a proposal, like the previous proposal, they went to a neighborhood meeting, and the neighbor said, like, we don't want this, we want the singles on both sides of the street, and the developers elected not to change it.
Okay.
It ultimately got withdrawn, so it never actually,
Public meeting.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'd mover to approve. Do I have a mover to disapprove?
Can I put a brand new one on the floor? Are we allowed to do that? Oh, is there any such thing as saying we move to approve providing you switch it to the front?
No, I don't
You can't
cut
do
deals.
that. You can't do that, okay, never mind.
I don't think so. What's the
Hey,
rule
I'm
on
just
that?
trying.
It's really the application that's before you.
Okay.
Yeah, so
All
you gotta
right.
stick-
Either like it or you don't like it.
Okay, thank you, Chair Duffy.
Can I ask the counselor out there, what's your opinion? I know I do a lot of selling in East Rolling, and it's probably the hottest zone of Charlottetown right now. The prices have gone up the most, and there's such a big demand for this product right now. What's everyone saying to you? They're just saying that they would like the R1?
I think there's so much change in East Royalty right now
There
with
is
development,
huge.
and I think people are really struggling with the amount of development that's happening out there. It's just exploded. I probably have about 300, Alex, would you say, in Montgomery Heights homes. You're out there, Chris, you know what I'm talking about. So, I mean, it's gone from country living in the city to an explosion of properties. And I know the developer, I know the work he does. He does, like I said, he'll do a beautiful subdivision. I'm caught between representing the people in my community who are there versus maybe what is a good thing for the community, you know, and it's not gonna be a bad thing, and you're right, the demand right now are twos, more so, right, we're hearing that.
So I guess in saying that, I'll vote to take staff recommendations and approve what's there, because I know personally the demand for this product. And I think if we would have had another 80 duplex lots in Montgomery, they would have been sold this year.
And I think the city's gonna have to look at the infrastructure concerns and stuff moving forward, so that might help support the amount of development that's happening, because it's astronomical.
Yeah.
Rosemary, you had a question?
I just wanted to comment that of the 10 letters that were sent to property owners, there were only 2 letters of opposition. And I wasn't able to attend the public meeting, but I see that only 2 residents spoke in opposition.
Yeah.
Maybe you're getting a lot of.
They're just
calls.
different, yeah, little
Yeah.
inputs here and there for sure, yeah.
There was a third letter of opposition, but it was posted. The third letter of opposition was someone who spoke at the public meeting. So I think in total there was between 3 and 4 people who expressed concern to me.
Rich?
Well, I just, did Chris not
He
make
put
a
his-
motion?
Well, yeah, we're gonna get back on
Oh,
track.
okay, I just wanted
Chris
to-
making the motion, are we, everybody okay right now? Okay. Chris, you're moving that we approve, and Reg, are you
Second.
seconded? Discussion, any more discussion? No? All those in favor? All those opposed? 5-3. In favor. Yes, that does add up to 8. Moving on. Sherwood Road, the 200 apartment building, David Arsenault, who is the
That's
person?
Robert.
Robert?
It's back in the hot seat again.
Must have got relegated down to tourism.
Case, I think they're
They
asking.
want to defer now.
Yeah, they are, but let me get
Pardon?
They want to defer,
Which one?
the one we're talking about.
The one that's coming up?
What is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
What's your
That
result?
was on my
Sure.
desk. and-
Robert can explain what's going
Yeah.
on.
okay. Okay, it's all yours, Robert.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So before you is a letter from the applicant requesting deferral. The applicant is here tonight to formally request that the application should be deferred for 1 month's time. The reasoning or rationale is in the letter before you, but mainly through some of the research and when I was writing a report, I circulated the development to some provincial agencies due to some reservations I had in regards to the proximity of the electrical substation. I was able to get in contact with someone that has a contact in Health Canada. So Health Canada is reviewing the proposal and will come back with a statement. So once that was presented to the applicant, he decided to he wanted to hold off and defer the application until that information is provided. He is here, so I can ask Dave Arson to come in to formally request deferral.
Sure.
That was my reason for,
Hmm?
that was my concern, was the proximity to the substation.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
good that they're gonna get some information. Good job, Chair.
We're not over yet.
I know, but you're doing a good job.
You're doing an amazing job.
You're really good at the 8s, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay, folks.
Hi, Mr. Arsenault, how you doing?
Great, you guys?
Good, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I just, Robert and I chatted this morning, and I basically just wanted to send a letter in, kind of as soon as we kind of discussed it on our end, just about deferring things for about a month. I think if we can defer for 1 month to the next planning board meeting. So the public meeting went, in my opinion, relatively well last week. There was there was public opposition, which I think anytime you mention apartment units in the hundreds, there's always seems to be traffic concerns and this and that. And then actually it was something that I kind of, you kind of notice when you come down, I guess, Small Pike Road, but when you look in, you see the buffering in between our proposed lot and the substation. There is a section of thinner trees, we'll call it, where the substation is kind of is visible. I made a list of what we're waiting on, hear back on, and it's a number of things. The Health Canada request, I think that was the city planning staff that requested the Chief Public Health Office make an opinion or give an opinion on the substation next to apartment units, which was then deferred to Health Canada, which you said you received a comment back, or you're
Waiting for Health Canada.
they confirmed receipt but haven't given an opinion.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. So I made a couple calls this morning to a couple of electrical engineers on just to kind of get the conversation started on what actual effect that is, because obviously if you look at a map, there's a residential subdivision right on the other side of it. So it's not I'm sure that it's not a new issue because that subdivision was put in after, I think it was 2 years after the substation was built. But that's, I guess that's just a few things that we can review there. But that being the number one thing, obviously, we're not going to continue with an application to put 200 parking units next to something that isn't safe for people to live next to. We're waiting on some responses from electrical engineers on that same issue. And then I've also reached out to Maritime Electric to have a chat with them. They had a letter that was sent in opposition that wasn't presented at the public meeting last Tuesday, and I didn't see it till today. So there's traffic flows as well that we're going to look at, and I know that was a concern that was brought up on Tuesday, and just a few of the items noted as shortcomings in the planning report that are things that we've been aware of, but I think we can do better to maybe alleviate some concerns before we go to approval. So that's my request for a deferral.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any questions
Okay.
from anyone, or is?
No, I think we're
I think
okay,
that's great.
right?
We had verbal.
Do I have a mover for the
Yeah.
deferral?
I move that we defer.
Moved by Councillor Yankoff, seconded by Councillor McKay,
Okay.
that this application from, is it Arsenal Brothers? Yes.
Yeah.
On Sherwood Road be deferred for 1 month? Is it 1 month or
Until we get
just
the information.
just deferred? Deferred?
Defer, yeah.
Ideally a month. Hopefully we'll
Yeah.
have our ducks in a row on all those items in a month.
So I have mover, seconder. Any discussion on that issue? No discussion. All those in favor? All those opposed? Deferral is approved 8-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you later.
See you later.
Thanks for stealing our plan.
Moving right on.
Thanks for stealing our plan.
Number 7 is, 7 agenda, but 9 of the overall scheme of them.
I think this is the last one.
This is Patriot Lane. And who's got this, Alex?
That is Laurel.
Oh,
She's-
exactly,
She's
yeah.
coming up the hallway, I'm hoping.
Yeah.
We should.
Maybe
Yeah, yeah.
make sure
Uh,
the chair does.
We should, if he's here.
That's what I mean, hopefully he didn't leave to say thank you to God.
Great job.
Oh, yes. Yeah. All yours, Laurel.
Perfect. So this application was before the board last month. And the board voted for it to proceed to public consultation. It's for a number of amendments to the zoning development bylaw and the official plan, and they're listed on the screen. The proposal is to rezone a portion of PID number 145466 to create a lot for a single detached dwelling, which is approximately 17,000 square feet with frontage on Patriot Lane, and the proposed lot is shown in yellow. The land is currently zoned C2 Highway Commercial, and it's part of a 1.74 acre parcel of land fronting on Malpeck Road that currently contains a single detached dwelling. And you can see from the dark green line to Malpeck Road is the subject lot. So the portion of the property that's proposed to be rezoned, it's vacant now, and the proposal is to sever the lot off at the back of the property and construct a single detached dwelling with frontage on Patriot Lane. There's currently a small strip of open space of land that separates this property from having frontage and access onto Patriot Lane, and it's shown in dark green along the cul-de-sac. Planning staff consulted with Parks and Recreation Department, and the recommendation is to deed a portion of land along Patriot Lane to give frontage to this property. And in exchange, the property owner will deed a strip of land adjacent to the city's larger parkland parcel, which you can see in the lighter green. That's equal to the area that the city would deed to the applicant. So therefore, no parkland would be lost if this land swap were to occur. So the land the city deeds along Patriot Lane, it would be rezoned to R1L, single detached dwelling, the same as the portion where the single family dwelling would be located. And the strip of land that would be deeded to the city by the property owner would be rezoned to open space. The land the applicant is proposing to deed as parkland is more beneficial to the city as it's adjacent to the larger parkland parcel and it contains a hedgerow of trees. This just shows the land swap, and this is actually an aerial showing the area. So where the there's a hedgerow of trees just north of that cul-de-sac. That would be the area where that would be deeded. So Patriot Lane, it still will remain a dead-end street, although there seem to be concerns about that at the public meeting, and it will still have direct frontage on the parkland parcel. So in accordance with section 310 of the bylaw, on October 16th, notice was sent to 35 property owners located within 100 meters of this property, and 5 letters were received in opposition, and 1 letter from the property owner was received to address some of the concerns from the residents at the public meeting. So several residents spoke at the public meeting in opposition of the rezoning, and a petition containing 15 signatures in opposition was also submitted, and those letters and the petition are attached to your report. So some comments in opposition at the public meeting consisted of concern regarding traffic that will be generated on Patriot Lane by the single detached dwelling. Residents felt that an additional house on the street would create an unsafe situation for people walking and children playing the street. Concerns about a blind driveway entering onto Patriot Lane and no sidewalks. One resident stated that children use the street as a play area and traffic from an additional house would create an unsafe situation for them to play in the street. They also indicated there's limited green space and residents use the strip of land along the cul-de-sac as a gathering place because our backyards are small. And there was also environmental concerns regarding loss of trees and loss of animal habitat, loss in property values due to the addition of a house because Patriot Lane is a dead-end street with limited driveways. So staff have been out to visit the site. This is the proposed house. And these are some pictures that we took when we were out on site. So it's staff's opinion that this small portion of land along the cul-de-sac is not functional as a park. It's approximately 7 feet deep at its narrowest point and approximately 32 feet at its deepest point along the cul-de-sac. And we walked in through this area, and this is the area that the city is looking to deed. So it's full of brush. There is a swale that runs through this along the cul-de-sac. It isn't large enough to place any playground equipment, and it's not usable to provide connectors for trails to the city's larger parkland parcel. This is a portion of the larger parkland parcel, but there's also an area that goes on further than this that's treed and has more natural area. So the portion of the land, as I described, is covered with brush, trees, and swale, and there appears to be walking paths on the adjacent property owner's land. So this is the adjacent property owner's land. We walked through the clearing, or the area that we own, into this clearing. Staff question, because there is some trails on this property, and staff question if residents are under the assumption that the city actually owns this piece of property, which isn't the city's, it's the adjoining property owners. So Patriot Lane, it's a cul-de-sac. However, lots, let's go back to the map. It's a cul-de-sac, but you can see that the lots are only subdivided halfway up and not around the actual bulb of the cul-de-sac. So that would normally happen on this type of street. You would normally have lots right around a cul-de-sac. The street is fully serviced with water and sewer, but with development not occurring north of the cul-de-sac, the servicing is not being utilized to its full potential. And it's staff's opinion that traffic generated from a single detached dwelling is negligible and will not create an unsafe situation. Patriot Lane it's a local street, and it was designed to support full bill there. There is a park containing a playground at the end of the street, and access to the park will remain from Patriot Lane. That's not going to be taken away. If you see along the back park where the larger parkland parcel is, that area will remain. It's not going to be rezoned. So that will give access to the residents on Patriot Lane, access to the park. So there's many policies in the official plan that support this proposal, and they were included in the report, various things such as infrastructure and housing. So staff feel that the proposal meets the technical requirements of the official plan and the zoning bylaw, and we're therefore recommending for approval of this request. If there's any questions, I can answer them, and the applicants are also here if the board has any further questions.
Any questions of Laurel? Rosemary?
I just have one question, Laurel. So the land from the city that we're left that could possibly be swapped, is that little area that juts out that connects onto the park area?
Okay, this pointer doesn't work, so I'm just gonna walk up. So we would be deeding this portion.
Okay.
This is the portion that the applicant would deed to us. So when we go to have, when this is surveyed, when the applicant has it surveyed, this area would be surveyed, and then this area would be surveyed. So they would give us an area equal to this. So we wouldn't be losing any parkland. This area is a little higher and drier, so and it contains that hedgerow, and Parks did meet on it, and they felt that it was an area that they would like to preserve for natural area. Parkland just isn't about having areas for playgrounds. There's also passive recreation areas, woods, all those kinds of things, streams, things like that are good for kids, like when they're growing up. You can put trails through wooded areas. So they look at, there's different types of parkland. So they did feel that this, had merit to accept.
Thank you.
Councillor Yankoff?
Thank you, Laurel, for your report. I'm just curious, who pays for the surveying of the land swap?
That would be the applicant, because they have to survey it anyways when they go to survey the lot for their home. So the surveyor will just do all the work when they're out there.
Both pieces?
Yes, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Bobby?
Laurel, you showed a picture of a walking trail, trees there that residents might be using. But isn't there a sign there that says private property there?
There is a sign that says it's further closer to the city's land. It says no trespassing. I think that might have went up after the public meeting. I'm not sure. But I had heard there were some signs that went up on the applicant's land as well after the public meeting that may not have been so nice. So I don't know, I'm not getting into that, but it's, when we walk the land, there were a number of trails, and I do have the impression that the residents think that this was the parkland that the city owned, and it isn't. This is well past the city's land, property boundary.
I took a drive in there and I'm looking for some big issue, but really there isn't. The little piece of land going to the applicant is just scrubland.
Yeah, yeah. I've been there a couple of times.
Oh, sorry. This
Basil.
is actually it. Yeah.
So on, excuse me, Chair, on that land, beside the piece that they're looking to deed over, or to build on, is there potential there for that they could take another lot off the back end of their primary residence?
Just a moment, I'll go back to the, so, something I should mention, oh. When the applicants come in, we did ask that if they would like to take a lot there and just do a swap, because there is a potential for another residential lot, but they didn't want to. They wanted to keep as much land as possible because they didn't, want someone that they didn't know living in their backyard. Last year, the city also deeded this piece to this property owner. So this property owner didn't have frontage on this cul-de-sac. There was like a small driveway here, but technically when the subdivision was approved years ago, for some reason, this probably should have been part of this lot, and it wasn't. So this got deeded to this property owner as well. And normally with a cul-de-sac, you would have lots that would go directly around a cul-de-sac because you're servicing the whole cul-de-sac. Another thing that the residents talked about was the center of the cul-de-sac that's planted with lilies, and it looks beautiful, but this development wouldn't affect any of that. I mean, they're not going to have to rip the road up, because there seem to be some concerns at the public meeting about that as well, but they wouldn't have to, tear the road up or anything to put that lot in. They would have to more than likely put a culvert in and a driveway, but yeah.
Okay. Ready for Shell?
Yeah, I feel like this is a really good use for this site and a good contribution to the parkland as well. So I would move that we accept staff's recommendation.
Okay, do I have a seconder? It's moved by Shallon, seconded by Bobby, that the application is before us at Patriot Lane be approved. Any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? 8-0. Thank you. Well, that brings to a close. Thank you, Laurel. Yeah.
And my kid, I have a new business too.
Yeah, okay. That brings to close the agenda part of our, thank you, Laurel, the application part of our agenda. Now we'll move on to keep our pointing at the bit to get on to new business. I can hardly wait to find out what it is that is really, holy smokes. Here we go. Introduction to new business. I guess since Alana brought it up first, she'll go first. How's that?
Thank you, Chair. So last month at our monthly meeting of council, there was a resolution on the floor for us to not recommend a spot zoning for a Weymouth Street property, and instead a deferral went in place for it to be deferred back to this committee to get more information between the residents and the person purchasing the property. So I haven't heard anything more about it. I was surprised to see it not on the agenda. So I'm just wondering, where does this lie? Because I have residents very much curious about the next process and where we're going with this.
I think Mr. Forbes has the background on that.
So that once this board has given a recommendation on it, so that council, it was in the council's hands. Council's asked for the deferral, so the deferral is with council. So staff will do a report, send it back to council, possibly outline some options that you may be able to do, but it's with council because this board has already given their recommendation on it.
Okay, so the next time we'll see this is next week at our monthly meeting of council, where we will vote then.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I can let my residents know.
Good. Mr. Forbes, you have a note of new business?
Actually, two pieces. And again, we should have been more prepared. I don't know whether Greg Morson's still here, but this is Greg's last meeting with us. Greg's going to move along and go into the private sector. Again, at least from staff, I mean, Greg's been a very valuable asset to the department. He presented lots of applications. Good for Greg. Maybe not so good for the city, but that's the benefit of people that are moving on in their careers. So good for Greg, but I think bad for us. But I just wanted to recognize Greg for all of the good work. He'd been here. He and I came at the same time, so I thought I was the old guy. I'd be likely leaving earlier, but again, he's young. So anyway, I just wanted to thank Greg for all of his contribution to the city, and just wanted everybody to be aware that this was his last meeting.
Thank you.
Yep. And on that note, he also, I don't know if everybody's aware of your new quarters, your new digs.
Yeah, and again, for those that we're in the McPherson Roach building, for those Charlottonians, and if you just want to come down and pop your head in the door and take a look at our new digs, by all means drop by. Don't go up to 233 Queen Street. It's kind of quiet in there. I walk by and it's kind of different now, but again, we're all settled in there. It was a big move for us. Planners carry a lot of paper.
Yeah.
So a lot of it had to go away. So the shredding truck was very busy. So.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, and my one last issue is that we do have a new number of councillors on this committee, as well as the lay people on the committee are relatively new as well. We've talked about this for a while, but I think it is imperative that we do have to do some training. What we wanted to do is with you folks is test the water. The training shouldn't be like half an hour, 45 minutes. Ideally, it should be a minimum of 2 hours, 2.5. I know that that's asking a lot from you folks. Contrary to popular belief, I think you would enjoy it. I mean, it's a good opportunity to just go walk through a number of scenarios, look at some recent IRAC decisions, explain when you're making your decision making here. It's easier for me to, if we do the training and then we get more orchestrated. Mike is the new chair. It's the same as a council. It's not ideal if staff are waving in the middle of something. We don't like to wave in the middle of something, but on the other hand, we need to communicate. But the more you folks know, the less I'll need to jump in, because sometimes too the public wonder, who's that guy over there? You may be going in a certain direction, and I'm just sort of the referee. But the more you folks know about that, the less then I need to participate. So the question is, you don't have to decide tonight. We may send around a poll of how many. We're likely not going to get everybody because of schedules, but would people be interested in coming in on a Saturday morning from 9 to maybe 10:30, bringing some coffee and a few things? David Hooley will be there, and we can really go over a lot of those very detailed questions that you have, and it's much more relaxed, right? In a morning setting like that. Unfortunately, after you get through a planning board meeting like this evening, at least the energy starts to wane around this time, and wouldn't be nice to roll into this and then start that discussion. So if you're not averse to that, I can send around an email, see how many people I can pick up. We won't get everybody, but we'll try to facilitate that to get as many as we can. Mr. Chair, I'm hoping that, again, as the chair, your schedule is open for that as well.
I'll be there, no matter when it is.
Just to piggyback, could you sort of tie that into something like going to an Iraq hearing as well?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can, because
I'd like to do that with the training, so we get, let's say we go to a hearing, see what goes on, and then ask you questions as to what we missed or what we didn't miss when we were here.
Right. It's a planning is it's a field of study, but it's also linked heavily to law, and and again, it's missteps, right? It's process. So when we get into controversial decisions, some people, if you don't like the decision, the process has to be very robust, and everybody's rights need to be respected. And if we miss somebody, again, after the public hearing on the application, let's say for Patriot, even though the residents were here tonight, technically they shouldn't speak unless there's new information. Because after the public meeting, if you allow the public to speak, then the residents should be able to speak. So there's all of these little nuances with the process, but we can have a nice, frank discussion. It can be relaxed, and I honestly think that you will possibly think that it is informative. When we're in planning school, that's one of the courses we take it right to the Dow Law School, land use planning law. And I joke with people, it's the first time you realize in your life when you're signing your name as a staffer, it's not a signature, it's not not an autograph. That thing is going to live, and it transacts the legal business of the city. And again, we have to be very careful signing subdivision plans, building permits, all of these things that we do. But it is indicating on your behalf and on the council's behalf that everything is copacetic. And if it's not copacetic, those documents are what they pour over to Iraq. Did the city sign it? Did they sign it in the right sequence? Was it like the discussion we had tonight for the reconsideration? Did they follow all of the steps? And we can explain an Iraq hearing. And again, the Iraq hearing is very comprehensive. I keep indicating it. There's very little they're going to miss there because they go over it in detail. And they take a much wider view of it than we did tonight on the reconsideration. So we'll send around some dates. We'll get David lined up, David's schedule, and there'll be some slides, and again, it'll be, I hope will be very informative for you folks, and will help you as you are making your decisions in the future.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Thank you, Alex. Thank you. Anything from anyone else? Are we ready to adjourn? Thank you very much for coming. We lasted a little over 2 hours. That's not bad. We covered a lot of territory, literally, figuratively. So enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you next month, hopefully.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, moved by Reg, seconded by Julie, that we are adjourned.